Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show today. Today, we're diving into one of the most important things you really need to be good at when you run a business, which is leadership. And by being a good leader, you can build a really good 7, 8, 9-figure operation with a really loyal tribe of employees and team members behind you that backs your cause. But it all comes down to you knowing how to lead. And with us today to talk about this is Tony Martignetti. Now, Tony is an executive and leadership coach with a specialty in working with leaders and their teams and helping them navigate through change and unlock their true potential. Now, he supports leaders in gaining clarity so they can make well-informed decisions, improve their leadership skills, and ultimately increase their impact. Now, Tony is known for supporting leaders in finding clarity so that they are energized, unstoppable, and able to lead with a very strong presence. Now, before sharing his experience as a coach, Tony was a finance and strategy professional and experienced working with some of the world's leading life sciences and biotech companies. Along this journey, he's also managed a number of small businesses and ran a financial consulting company as well. It's his passion for helping people that fuels his inspiration at Inspired Purpose Coaching. Tony, welcome. Thanks for coming on with us today.
It is my pleasure to be here, Ty. Thank you for having me.
You're the leadership guru. So let's dive in there. What's the key to somebody really being a good leader?
Yeah, they have to let go of their ego, which is the first thing. Oftentimes people come into leadership and there's this element of like, yeah, I'm really great at what I do. And they own all the things that have made them amazing on their journey up to the top. But leadership is service, and it's serving people. And when you start to realize that you're only as powerful as people around you, as the people who will follow you. And that is a really humbling experience, but at the same time, it's a very empowering experience when you realize that the people who make you the leader.
Yeah, that's interesting. How do you define a good leader?
Yeah, a good leader is somebody who can really inspire people to do what is important for them and for everyone around them. Inspiration's at the core of everything. It's the driving force. And so what I would say is that you're a leader who can get people to want to get up every day, to come to work, and to give it 110%, then you're doing the right thing. So my definition of a leader is someone who can inspire people to go beyond just showing up.
So in your experience of coaching executives, have you found that inspiration and being inspirational is something that's kind of just naturally ingrained in some people and not others? Or is that a skill set that can really be learned and taught?
Absolutely can be taught. It can be learned, I should say. It's something that you have to build over time. So some people have a natural presence about them that makes them inspiring. And it comes from a lot of their story. People have gone through a lot of trials and tribulations in their lives that make them inspiring just by who they are. But it doesn't mean that anyone could be inspiring. It all comes from how if you're inspired, you can inspire. And there's an element of people will not follow you without trust. So that's another foundational element of this. It's not just inspiration. People have to also believe you. And to believe you, they have to have trust in you. So there's 3 real big linchpins there: trust, belief, and inspiration.
What's the best things that you found in your experience to really build that trust?
Yeah, the first thing you can do is be human, be honest, and be fully you in all the times that you're interacting with people. When you're trying to put on a show of, I have all the answers, just listen to me, I'll tell you all the answers to all the problems. People start to realize that, it's not likely that you have all the answers. How could any one person have all the answers to all the problems? They start to doubt that. And when you fail, you fall down, they're not going to be there to want to pick you back up, because you didn't show your human side. So the more and more you can show your humanity and show people that you care about them, that's the other part of this human component. That's how you build trust, because people see you as more than one-dimensional.
What about belief? Is belief really more about you doing what you say you're going to do, and then your team gets behind you and knows that you're a man of or woman of your word per se?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, trust is the foundation, and I think the belief is the next part of it, and that is people will believe you when they trust you, and and then there's an element of inspiration that comes off of that. So I think that's once they know that they can believe the words that are coming out of your mouth, and they can see that you've got proof that the things that you're doing are real, and that you have some heart behind what you're doing, then there's an element of, yeah, this is someone who I can get behind, I can trust.
Do you find that a lot of leaders just that they have to work to get the passion to be good leaders? Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs like want to go do what they really want to do, and I don't know how many people are naturally passionate about becoming good leaders. So is that something you really need to consciously focus on? Or how do they kind of gain that passion to become a good leader?
That's a great question to pose, and I guess it starts with there's a few different angles to look at it. So first and foremost, if you're like a founder of a company or an entrepreneur who comes up the ranks, there's a passion within you for something. You're driven by something that you want something for the world. You want something for yourself. And then eventually it wanes because you have to figure out what it is that the next part of your journey requires of you. So there's an element of constantly having to check in with yourself and ensuring that you have what it takes or what you need to move to the next part of your journey. And that's why it's not a one and done situation. It's not like you just, you find your passion and then it's done. Passion is actually something you find along your path to purpose. So when you find your purpose, passion is something that keeps showing up in that purpose. So I don't mean to confuse things, but in reality, passion is not something you just shows up and you say, okay, this is what I'm going to follow my passion. It actually gets reinforced by you doing things on a day-to-day basis that you like to do. And you're starting to see it more and more, and it builds over time. And so you have to continue to build that like a muscle. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
What do you think is one of the easiest ways to really be humble as a leader? Because, and I think that ties back into what you mentioned about ego. Man, I see this on a lot of reality shows,
Mm.
whatever bar rescue, no matter which one I'm watching, the business
Hmm.
owner's just a jerk. Like they're cocky, they're arrogant, even though they're really not good at what they're doing. And they're like blocking out, the information that could help make them better. And then I find other leaders that are just like very humbled by their opportunity to serve. And I try to figure out, is that a natural thing in people? Is that like being humble learned? I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I often think about this as being a situation where you need to have that self-reflection. You have to go within to see how am I really showing up? The classic example of, the fish doesn't know that he's swimming in water. They just, they don't know it's there. They're just being. And oftentimes the people who are doing, being very ego driven or feeling as though, oh, why isn't everyone listening to what I'm saying? Or why aren't they just following along? It's because they don't know what they sound like, or they don't realize how they're showing up. And so the best way to change that course is by, stepping back and saying like, how am I being received? And maybe there's a way that I can get another perspective, so that I can see maybe I'm coming off as abrasive, maybe I'm coming off as being too pushy or whatever it may be. And by having some of that reflection from another person, a coach or whatever it may be, then I can change. The first thing that all of this has to hinge on is a willingness to change, and that is the biggest challenge. A person has to first have a desire to say, I want to get better. I want better results. In order to do that, they have to have that first inkling that I can, and I'm willing to seek help.
Yeah, and I think that's a hard thing to do, because what it comes down to is when you're a leader in an organization, your employees aren't going to tell you a jerk typically, unless they're
Yeah.
quitting. right? And they're doing it over the Walmart intercom in the store, which you've seen on YouTube many times.
Yeah.
But I mean, outside of that, most people aren't going to tell you that work for you. And if you really are an egotistical, it's hard to do that self-reflection, I think. And you hit on
Yeah.
coaching. I think maybe that's one of the benefits that coaching in the outside perspective brings, is to kind of slap you in the face and say, dude, you're being a jerk, and tell you the things that you're not realizing and your employees won't tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's, in some companies where there's board of directors, outside advisors, they're the ones who are gonna, be the ones who notice these things. And sometimes it's too late, where they'll come in and say, okay, it's time for you to move on. And we need to bring in someone different to run the show. Ideally, you can catch it before it's too late. And so that's, I guess, the message for a lot of people who, are, feeling like things aren't right, or they have a sense that things aren't right. Check in with yourself. Just make sure that that it's not you. If things aren't going quite as well as they could be, maybe just look in the mirror and say, I wonder how I'm showing up. If there's some way I can improve on that. Even if things are going great, there's always an element of, could it be better?
What are some red flags to notice that, Tony?
What's
Because I
that?
think that, a lot of entrepreneurs, they're, like I said, it takes a problem for them to recognize that there's an issue.
Yeah.
What are some red flags you see that are clear indicators that we've got leadership issues that the leader could be aware of and say, oh, wait a second, these are clear signs that I might be having leadership issues?
Yeah. Well, silence, people not talking, people not speaking up. I do a lot of work around psychological safety, and psychological safety is really just to kind of make it as simple as possible. It's about people not feeling safe to speak up on a team or in an organization, because they don't feel as though what they have to offer is being heard. So they just stop talking. They stop sharing. They stop bringing good ideas to the table. And that is the killer of great businesses. So for a leader to hear that no good ideas are coming to the table, or people aren't having constructive, I'll use air quotes, constructive arguments, because arguments are not all bad. There's an idea that some friction is good. You don't want everyone to say, oh yeah, I completely agree, and then just go out the door and everything stays the same. You want people to argue with each other, but in a way that they still respect each other. So if your leader is hearing complete silence, or nothing is really being raised to him or her, that's a problem.
Yeah. Sense. That way people are afraid to speak up. So that's a pretty good, clear indicator that you're doing a bad job leading. How do you unlock your true potential as a leader?
Yeah, I mean, the way you do that is first understanding what are the true strengths and the areas of genius that I have as a person, and that's the starting point. When you see that, and you're able to really say, how can I spend more time there, and how can I spend less time on the things that are taking up my time but not necessarily of value to me, that's where you start to unlock your potential. Is you start to see ways of shifting your energy towards things that are putting you in your true power, and away from things that drain you. That's how you truly get there. And it's also about being inspired, making sure that you're constantly thinking, what makes me get out of bed every day and want to run to work? It seems a little dramatic, especially in this day and age where everyone's not really running to work. We're all getting out of bed and just going to work. But nonetheless, that's what you want to look for, is that little spark of what makes you who you are.
What do you face to lose here? I mean, can teams work well without a good leader? I mean, what's really the importance of having a good leader versus what happens when there's not a good leader in place?
It's a great question. And there's so many things that are at stake here. First and foremost, when your business is challenged and you don't have a good leader, then things start to really show their stress points, and people start to fall away and they don't want to go the extra mile. It doesn't really, you can't weather a storm without a good leader. So that's one thing for sure. And also, you're not getting the maximum potential out of your people. And it's not about using them as assets. That's the one thing that I want to make sure people understand, is that a lot of leaders use people as if they're a commodity. And that is a very unhealthy, toxic way of thinking. What you want to be doing is saying, how can I get people to come on board and I can make them better people for coming here? And by doing so, you're going to have a workforce in an organization that will return an outcome to your company that is far better. You have a triple bottom line where you basically will have a better profit, better innovation. You'll have people who are engaged and driven by your purpose. That is an amazing outcome when you truly see people as the front point of your driving business.
What are the kind of mistakes, and you mentioned ego, which I think is by far the biggest. What are the kind of mistakes do entrepreneurs make in attempting to try to be good leaders?
What are the mistakes that entrepreneurs make and try to be good leaders? It's a good question. I mean, there's an element of trying to make bold moves because they're trying to insert themselves, or to show people that they are, really smart, or that they're able to drive a business forward. This especially comes out when there's a person who's replacing a founder, let's say, or who's trying to prove their worth. So they'll make a bold move without fully thinking it through. And then the repercussions are it failed. It didn't work out. And failures happen. But at the end of the day, then they start blaming other people for the reason why it didn't work out. So sometimes it's better to take a slow road to making changes happen. And that's one of the things I've seen. Another thing is not believing enough in themselves, in their abilities. So that's the flip side of the coin. It's not an ego, it's more of a lack of belief in themselves. And so by doing that, they don't play big enough. So one of the things I often talk about is how leadership is a balancing act, and you have to strike that balance between knowing when to be hard and when to be soft, when to be vulnerable, when to be strong. And this takes experience, and it takes time to craft that right balance.
What do you advise your clients that are doing this and they just burn out, stress, from all the facets of running a business, and then, the stress of trying to lead a team and be a good leader? How do you help them avoid burnout and stress?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics because I think this is such an important part of it. The entrepreneurial mindset is wired towards, constantly staying in action and constantly, what else can I be doing? What more can I do? And so it's so important that there's two things that I think about. One of them is, where are you creating space for you? Not only for you to be able to be with your thoughts, because you need to be able to think about what's next, to be visionary, but also to make sure that you're recharging. The old adage of put your own oxygen mask on first, because if you can't take care of yourself, you're not going to be there to be able to take care of others. And that's so important for people to think about. I have a friend who he's trained for Ironman before, and he said that rest day is training day. So you have to make sure that you plan for a rest day so that you can continue your training regimen. So important. So if you don't have time to rest, you're not going to make it for the long run.
And I think it's a great point, but I just see a lot of business owners mess this up. One of my mentors taught me to be able to build in this time just to think, just to focus. And man, the business has jumped leaps and bounds as I've had that time to do that. But as you said, a lot of entrepreneurs move forward, work, get stuff done. So how do you teach your coaching clients this? How do you teach them that they can take giant leaps forward by just taking a step back and giving themselves time to just think and not actually working in the business?
Yeah. Well, there's an element of challenging their priorities and thinking to themselves, okay, how important is that next client meeting? Okay, like for example, if you were to say, would you cancel on a client? And if the client meeting was tomorrow, and well, what would you consider yourself important to? Why would you cancel on yourself? Like for example, if you block off time on your calendar to be with yourself, and you consider that you're an important part of your business, why cancel on yourself? That's like canceling on a client, because you can't be powerful for a client if you're canceling, the time for you to be powerful. I'm not probably doing it justice right here, but the whole point is you want to make sure that you're respecting your time. So if you block off time to be with you, make sure you respect yourself and you don't constantly cancel it, which I know I've been there before, and I understand that element of, oh, I'll just take this off the calendar and clear some space. The reality is it's just as important as time with the client, because you're preparing for being with the client. If you're not in your full place of power with your client, then you're actually doing them a disservice.
What about imposter syndrome? How do you help your clients do that? Because, I mean, let's be honest, I think we all face that, where we kind of get to a point in a business, if the business is successful, where we feel like we're fake and we shouldn't be there. And we're like, we hope people don't find out that we have no idea what we're doing in that stage of the business. I know I experienced it. I think a lot of entrepreneurs do. How do you help your clients get past that?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody has imposter syndrome at some point, although I do know a fair amount who don't. Excuse me. The reality is, to overcome that, I mean, it's all about, keep on showing up and keep on getting into that uncomfortable place, because the more you do that, the more you show up as an imposter, you're actually growing yourself into that space. You're creating the element of who you're going to be next. It's great to be an imposter, because that means you're growing. Just because you feel like an imposter doesn't mean you are. It's just all made up in your head. It's all how you're perceiving yourself. So if you're feeling like an imposter, I say good for you, because it means that you're doing something you haven't done before. And then on the flip side of that, I would say nobody is doing what you're doing the way you're doing it. Everyone has a unique voice about their area of expertise or whatever company they're in. So although there is competition out there, nobody does it like you. Nobody has your point of view on the thing that you're doing. So always think about what uniquely you bring to your business. And that will always be the North Star about how to be you in the space you're in.
What kind of things should you be doing to invest in yourself to help become a better leader?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the things I always say is have a great morning routine. The morning routine is doesn't cost much. So what it costs is time and energy. So get up early, have yourself some time for yourself. Don't start the day in your email or thinking about and worrying about what's going to happen that day. Spend the time drinking water, getting hydrated, going for a walk, getting some exercise, meditating, journaling. One of the best things you can do for yourself is to journal, because it just gets all that stuff out in your head and onto paper. I talk a lot about a worry list. When people start worrying about a lot of things, it takes up space in your brain. And the best way to get it out of your head is to just put it on a worry list, so that it has it's been released from your head, at least for now. Doesn't mean it won't come back in, but at least you can free yourself from it's circulating. So yeah, I think those are some things that people can start with to become a better leader, is to create good habits like that. And then there's also the, readers are leaders. Read great books. I always have great recommendations. I do a podcast myself where I'm always talking about, what book has impacted you. Every leader has a great insight on what book has truly made an impact in their lives. So, yeah.
What are some of your favorite books?
I mean, one of my favorites, and this is going to be one that will be a little out of left field, is called The Art of Possibility by Benjamin Zander. And the reason why I love it is because it opens up so many possibilities around, first of all, he talks about being in the concentration camps and, coming from a place of literally not really feeling any idea of how they would get out of that situation, but always seeing that even in the darkest of times, you can see a possibility of what could happen, when we get out of here, if this gets over. And, his book just goes on to talk about all these great ways to reframe in your thinking. When you screw up, he says this thing, he says, how fantastic, because now you're learning. I love that. So.
Yeah, I love that too. I often say I love to make mistakes, because like if you make mistakes, you're trying new things. And I tell our team that same thing too. I'm like, you need to fail, because if you're not failing, you're not trying. So I think that's really awesome. What about inspiration? What are some of the coolest ways that you've seen good leaders inspire teams?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, coming up in the biotech spaces, and I saw a lot of inspiration, and a lot of it comes down to putting at the center who is really benefiting from the company, from the product that you're building, whatever you're doing. We'd always think, what does the patient need, and what are the hurdles that we need to overcome to make sure that that patient gets what they need to survive. I mean, this is not just about a lot of the drugs I worked on. They were, life-saving drugs that people would die if they didn't have it. And so from that perspective, when you say, okay, the patient is waiting, their lives are on the line, you start to get inspired around this, like, wow, like what we do really, really changes lives. And that inspires. But it's not just that. It doesn't have to be that dire or so grand. It could be simple things like, okay, I'm inspired because I want to see people, using this product that I'm building because it's going to change their lives in little ways. Like, can you imagine a world where people will be able to, use a cell phone and it's going to have all these things in it, things we wouldn't have imagined many years ago. So anyways, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but inspiration is everywhere, and you really can find and connect to it just by stepping back and putting on a different set of glasses.
What are some of the most effective ways you've seen good leaders build high performance, very effective teams? Because I know there's a lot of things leaders do, but, being an executive coach like you are, you've probably seen, a lot of really cool ways that people are doing this.
Yeah. Well, I said a couple of them earlier, which are the foundation. Trust, absolutely. If you don't have trust in a team, you're pretty much not going to have a team that is going to last very long or do very much. Create friction is number two, because friction is something that is needed in order for something to happen. Iron sharpens iron. If you don't have that collision, then nothing happens. And then the other thing is psychological safety. People have to feel safe to speak up. If they don't feel like they can share their ideas, then they won't. So those are all foundations of high performance teams. And then, good leadership at the top, someone who's going to be able to not necessarily be the person who's going to, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, but more leading from behind. There's a concept that comes from how horses lead. Good horse herds, they actually lead, the strongest horse will lead from behind the herd. And that is a lesson that we've learned through many, many years of watching horses. A great leader knows that you put your people, you lead in the front in the sense that you are, you'd go in the face of danger if that was the case. But you also know that you want your people to be at the focal point. You want to make sure that they're getting exposure, they're getting what they need to grow. And they know to look back and say, is this the time for me to do what I need to do? Is this just safe for me to move forward? When you're leading from behind, you're showing them that it's okay, let's move forward. Without having all of the taking all of the credit and taking all of the kudos. You are giving them the space to be who they are.
Tony, how does a good leader give feedback to employees?
How does a good leader give feedback?
Yeah, somebody messes up.
Yeah.
You know, there's probably a lot of wrong ways to do it to be a bad leader. But how's a good leader really give genuine feedback to a team member to help them improve?
Well, first and foremost, timely. Make sure that it's like you're not waiting, until a month later to say, "Oh, by the way, this, that, and the other thing." It has to be timely, and it has to be very specific. So the more specific, the better, because then that way they know exactly what they need to do more of, not just, "Hey, you did a good job on that thing." It's more of this particular part of that project is what you did really well, and we need to do more of that during the next project. So I'd say those are the two big parts of good feedback, and do it very intentionally and focused. Like, in other words, if you're giving feedback and you're half paying attention and you're not looking into their eyes and you're not really doing it with intention, it's going to come off as insincere. So, do it with authenticity.
Awesome. I mean, really good information today, Tony. Where can everybody go to learn more and hear more? Because there's a bunch of stuff you have out there, and we were only able to scratch the surface on some of your knowledge. So where can everybody go to tap into more of your knowledge?
Sure. They can go to my website. It's probably the best place. It's inspiredpurposecoach.com. And I'm also on the social media channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, and what have you. But yeah, I think the best bet is to come to my website and reach out, sign up for my newsletters or what have you. And I'm always up for a chat. So that'd be great.
Thanks for coming on with us today, Tony.
It was my pleasure. This is a lot of fun.
So everybody, look, I mean, if you're going to run an organization, you need to be an effective leader, and how effective you are as a leader really will determine how much revenue and how much profit you generate in the organization. I don't know the stats, but it's absurd how much money a lost employee costs an organization. And the reality is a lot of people leave organizations because the leader sucks. They are not happy with the way the leader is leading. So when you can lead effectively and you're able to take your vision and have a team jump behind that vision and passionately want to pursue it as much as you do, and you could just get so much more done when everybody on the team wants to do that. Not to mention your ability to attract A players, your ability to retain A players is substantially increased as well. So there's so many facets to running an effective organization that all come down to being a good leader. And if you want to learn more about being a good leader, because we just scratched the surface today, make sure you visit inspiredpurposecoach.com. That's inspiredpurposecoach.com to be able to learn a lot more from Tony about being a good leader. And I'm also going to put links in the show resources page to Tony's social media links pages as well. He shares a lot of great content on the social channels. So I'm going to make sure that you have the links to visit his social channels. And also, if you want to be a good leader, take one action step today. All you have to do is visit inspiredpurposecoach.com and tap into a lot more of Tony's knowledge that can help you become an awesome leader. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Have a great day.